3, 2, 1.
So hello, this is Base Hussar, and this video is going to be about mine and two other YouTubers' favorite tank modernization programs. Um, I have with me Cannon Man Gaming here
Hello.
and Easy12 Gamer 12.
Hello, everyone.
So let's start with maybe Cannon Man. What is your favorite tank modernization program?
Before we get
Right,
started, ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to hit the like, comment, share, and subscribe. And go check out all three people's channels and do the same over there. Base Hussar has got he's starting from fresh, so all the support he can get will be really appreciated. And Cannon Man Gaming is just a geek that knows a lot about tanks. Go check his channel out. He's got some very good, very good information. He knows more finer details. And Base Hussar is also very clever. So go check them out.
Yeah, guys, if you guys enjoy my content, go check out Easy and Hussar. They are wonderful people, number one, and also they generate some really cool content. Hussar, like Easy said, is brand new. So please, brothers, let's go show him some love. All right,
If you don't support me, you're ableist.
Hussar's permanently confined to a car. For those who can't pick up what I'm putting down, he's disabled and he's in a Ferrari wheelchair. Anyway,
Yeah,
moving.
basically, I tried to take myself closer to being a tank.
Oh damn! If only we could.
See that wheelchair.
All right, so quickly jumping into what my favorite modernization program is. Damn, having an aneurysm on this side is the Leopard series of modernizations, particularly the Leopard 2 more specifically. So the Leopard 2 was the third generation German main battle tank, or MBT, henceforth referred to as such, developed by Krauss Maffei in the 1970s. And the first Leopard 2 tank, entered service in 1979 and replaced the earlier Leopard 1 as the main battle tank for the West German Army. For those who are not caught up on history, Germany after the Second World War and at the start of the Cold War was divided into East and West Germany, the East German bloc being controlled by the Soviet Union and the West German bloc being controlled by the what we would call the Western Allies, so the United States, France, and Britain, amongst others. So various types of Leopard 2 exist. So we have obviously the Leopard 2A5 and the 2A6, which are going to be the main variants that I'm going to talk about. But we've also got plenty of other Leopard variants, such as the 2PL. I think the Leopard 2AV as well is also a variant, the Leopard 2PT. So you get the idea. The Leopard is a very, very modified and very, very expansive, well, the Leopard 2 series rather, is a very expansive series of main battle tanks, and it served the German army and its subsequent export partners very, very well. So the main difference between the Leopard 2A5 model of the Leopard 2 series tank and the Leopard 2A6 series of the tank pretty much comes down to the genetics of the tank, if we were to almost personify this wonderful armored machine. And in fact, the Polish army we were discussing before we started recording with Hussar, the Polish army is very creative with their MBTs, and they've probably created the most successful variant of the Leopard 2, which is the Leopard 2PL, which featured enhanced turret cheek armor, but was fundamentally the same as the 2A4 variant, if I'm not mistaken.
So it was a 2A4, which was upgraded to the standards of the 2A5 and 2A6.
Yes, so that's basically what the Polish have done, and that has subsequently laid the foundation going forward for both the German army, the Bundeswehr, as well as subsequent export partners. Spain, I believe, operates a few 2PLs. I know that the Finns, as well as the Swedes, also operate 2A5s. Sorry, I mean the Spanish operate 2A5s as well. Sorry, I think I said 2PLs. But basically, the difference with so for a bit of context, the 2A5 going up from the 2A4 variant of the tank, the 2A5 was completed in 1990, featured and first was delivered to the Bundeswehr in 1995. And the German army at the time took 225 Leopard 2 MBTs of the 2A5 configuration. The main variance is basically that the 2A5 featured slightly better survivability over the 2A4, but also featured the very revolutionary, in my opinion, I don't know what the other two think, but the revolutionary development of slanted turret cheeks, which is very, very seldomly seen on a tank. I mean, really, the only other tank that that I can think of, at least off the top of my head, that we see it on is the Challenger 2. So, yeah, I mean, the 2A5 over the 2A4 was pretty much the same tank. It wasn't that much, except for the additional armor on the turret cheeks. It wasn't that much different. However, that being said, going from the 2A5 to the 2A6, that's where the big difference comes in. So the 2A6 variants, and this is why I love this modernization program. So the 2A6 and its subsequent subvariants like the 2A6M, firstly included the introduction of a L55 120mm smooth bore cannon. So up until this point, it is important to note that largely the most sort of widely distributed gun that you found on main battle tanks, and this is also not just limited to Europe, it's kind of across the globe, was the L44, which was the 120mm, and I believe the British also made use of the L44 rifle developed by Rheinmetall and Co. So the L55 was a step up. It featured better durability as a cannon barrel, and also had generally better performance over the L44. The 2A6 also featured enhanced mine protection and against things like IEDs, things like roadside mines, anti-tank mines, so forth. So just overall better protection, at least from the underneath the belly of the tank, which is the soft part of the tank. It also, which is quite interesting in my opinion, featured the 2A6 variant also featured better internal components. So things like electronics, thermals, night vision devices, better hydraulics for the turret, better fire control systems, better range finding, all of those fun goodies that make the Leopard 2A6 an absolute nightmare for top tier MBT players in War Thunder. But anyway, I digress. So further on the 2A5, just to give a couple of specs, the 2A5 featured a standard NATO 4-man crew. It weighed 62.5 tons. It had a gun length of a total length of the gun forward of 9.62 meters, a hull length of 7.72 meters. It was 3.74 meters wide and had a height of 2.48 meters. The main armament of the A5, was the 120 smoothbore cannon of the L44 variant, with a elevation range of -6 degrees to +20 degrees. It's featured two 7.62mm standard NATO machine guns and had a traverse range of 360 degrees. The main ammunition load, was 42 rounds, and the machine guns carried a whopping 4,750 7.62 rounds, which is crazy. And that's just like ammunition, like standard ammunition, which is crazy. The mobility, the tank of the 2A5 variant could reach 72 kilometers of top speed and had a range of 500 kilometers, which is pretty impressive. I mean, if you think about how far you can go on a tank of gas with a car, I don't think it's 500 kph. Oh, sorry, 500 kilometers. Kph is k's per hour. Excuse that slip of the tongue. Although I think I would pay to see a car go 500 k's an hour. Then you've got the 2A6 variant, which entered service in 2001. It also carried the stock standard crew of 4 personnel in their tank. It weighed 62 tons, so it's slightly lighter than the 2A5. Had a total length of 10.97, which I believe is ever so slightly longer, and this is due to the fact that the 2A6 utilized a L55 cannon, which was slightly longer for better long-distance engagements, which was identified by the German Defense Ministry to be of something paramount to Germany's self-defense and national interest going forward in terms of its armored department, or armored corps rather. Their hull length was 7.7 meters, with a width of 3.7 meters and a height of 3 meters, so roughly the same as the 2A5, maybe slightly longer, slightly higher, but all told, very, very little. Most of the other statistics have remained the same, negative 9 to 20 degrees elevation and depression, 42 rounds of main ammunition carried, with 4,750 rounds carried for the machine guns mounted pintally and coaxially. The only difference, though, and I think this is, I don't know, maybe Hussar can give insight into whether or not this is a result of the additional sort of armor packages that they added onto the 2A6. But the 2A6 dips from 70 kilometers an hour, or 72 k's an hour of top speed for the 2A5, and dips down to 68 kph top speed. So, I don't know, maybe the additional weight was worth it. I don't know what you guys think.
I assume that it's probably because of the longer gun, because when you extend the gun, then like the weight balance is kind of off, so you also have to do a bit of work internally. So more weight onto the turret, but you want to keep the turret rotation the same. So you tweak a little things here and there. That probably adds some weight. Yeah, that's what I assume.
And you, Easy, what's your take on? Do you think that the longer rifle and the longer cannon, sorry, is with its better performance, is a fair trade-off for top speed?
It depends on a country's doctrine. If you're looking at like what's happening now at the moment in a certain country that's at war with another certain country,
Which shall henceforth be unnamed.
Yeah. Is your doctrine like World War II, fast maneuvers, open field? We were talking about this last night, me and Base Hussar. Or is your country doctrine static, like the Challenger was originally made to be? Like the British relying on the Americans, but anyway, we won't get into that. It depends on your doctrine. Do you want to sacrifice weight for firepower, or do you want to sacrifice speed for firepower? So it depends on the doctrine. What your doctrine is. It's that's my opinion. Like I am in your face shoot, so I want speed. So I will sacrifice the bigger gun because I'm going to get into your face and I'm going to give you a slap. That's my doctrine.
Yeah.
My take on this is that in an open field type of combat, a longer gun is way more important, because in an open field, targets will move faster because they have to survive. So you need that longer gun to get that more accuracy and more velocity from your rounds, so you can more reliably take them out.
True.
However, in an urban combat scenario, a shorter gun is a bit more flexible, and this is not only with armored vehicles but also with infantry.
Yeah, the snubbing of rifles in urban combat has been seen in real instances as well. So there we have our evidence that this is indeed the case. But I think you guys both raise a very interesting point when it comes to the how the doctrine plays out, and also the terrain that you find yourselves fighting in. With the Europeans, especially Germany in the Bundeswehr, they basically look to be fighting in the fields of Poland. That's kind of where their focus comes in, and those fields are by all means and intentions fairly flat. Yes, you've got urban centers, yes, you've got towns, yes, you've got roads, but it's basically a flat land. There's no really highly, it's not like within South Africa where you have a plethora of very different environments, and Easy's going to get into that when he speaks about his chosen tank, which I think if you guys like South African tanks, I suggest you stick around for that. But anyway, so yeah, I mean the Leopard 2A6 basically, as we've discussed, sacrifices the slight increase of, or the slightly higher top speed essentially, and it sacrifices it for the slightly longer gun, which I think what Hussar was basically trying to say is basically what the Germans are going to be fighting in, is those open fields where you do need that slightly longer gun for that higher velocity from the round, and also the better fire control accuracy. But moving on it impressively, actually, gents, maintains that range of 500 Ks even with the additional weight. So I think that's that's a feat of German engineering proper. But that's essentially the 2A6. It's a step up from the 2A5 in terms of capability, in terms of its overall electronics and just general survivability. The 2A6 is slightly superior in terms of those aspects than the 2A5. Fundamentally, if you're looking at a 2A5 and a 2A6 next to each other, and this is actually a question I asked Hassar earlier, how you tell the difference between the two, and really the only difference that you can visibly see is the fact that the 2A6 has a slightly longer barrel. So side by side you'll see it, but next, like separate instances where you see these tanks, it's going to be very hard to tell the difference. But that being said, that's not where all the differences sort of rely or can be found.
If you look at a tank long enough, you'll differentiate it from its variants.
Yeah, there's small differences that sort of come into play, and I mean, like, you'll see it with the change of optics, because, like I said previously, all of the internal electronics of the 2A5 got upgraded quite massively when it came to the 2A6 variant being developed. And I see now that there's also, well, I see now, there has also been the development of the 2A7, and now there's rumors of a 2A8 variant coming out, and these will all have very increased capabilities in terms of electronic warfare. You know, being able to data sync with fighters and with ships and with missiles and back with HQ, and being able to stream data to the tank commander of the platoon to be able to, give out orders. Electronic hardening against jamming and spoofing. All of these various sort of electronic countermeasures that I think the average person doesn't really realize exists within a main battle tank. It's quite an extensive upgrade package that the 2A6 underwent, and I from the information that I'm able to glean off of the interwebs, the 2A7 has had an even more extensive upgrade package applied to its internal electronics and just general internal components. I believe it's also got a better engine than the 2A6. So you take an already fast MBT and you make it even faster, without really sacrificing too much of the performance of the gun or the performance of the armor. So yeah, that's the 2A6 in a nutshell. I look, I mean, I often laugh when they bring out another Leopard variant, but you can't deny, I mean, and it's just based off the sheer number of export partners that Germany has for the Leopard. The Leopard is a very, very effective tank, and it's a very, very cost-effective tank for many NATO countries. And I mean, the War Thunder players at top tier will know, when you see a Leopard roll around the corner, you kind of scratch your head and you go, well, is this my last day? Because, to be frank, the Leopard 2 is a very, very effective tank, and especially against Soviet war machines, it's a very effective tank. It has the mobility over them in many regards. It has slightly better armor than them in many regards. I think the only thing that the Soviets do better, or that the Russians do better, over the Germans, is building low tanks, because I don't think the Germans get the memo that a high-profile tank is seen very easily. Because, I mean, this thing's like 3 meters.
Because NATO prioritizes crew survivability and ergonomics.
Yeah. Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, like, the British Challenger has a tea-making machine. Like, come on, guys. We need that in a tank. But I saw a video. So recently, NATO's concluded an exercise in Lithuania, and they interviewed, Forces News interviewed a couple of people that were on operation. And the Challenger crews and the commanders and even the Leopard crews have a very similar mechanism within their tank. I'm not too sure what the gig is, though. But basically, they said they love operating for extended periods of time in their tanks because A, it's warm, B, it's spacious, it's comfortable, and C, you've got some minor amenities that sort of make living in the field a little bit easier. So, I mean, would you rather be in a tank like that, or would you rather be in a tank like the T-80 that's like literally 1.5 meters or something? It's survivability, because NATO doesn't have, and I think the Leopard encompasses NATO's doctrine very, very well. Because we don't have lots of men to just throw into a war, we're going to make it survivable so that they can get out of the tank and they can fight another day in another tank that we can make fairly easily. And also the fact that we want these guys to be at their peak fighting performance. So let's make them comfortable. Let's give them basic amenities to improve
Give them
their
a kettle
performance.
so they can have tea, the ultimate English
So
ergonomic upgrade.
It's not even funny. Like, it is so English, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the 2A6 and the 2PL and subsequent variants of the tank, all that have brought the Leopard series of tanks into the modern era, I think have made arguably the most dangerous predator on the battlefield. The Leopard 2A6 and 2A5, even the 2A5 itself, is still a very, very, very threatening vehicle. It's a very threatening war machine to come across because it's so effective, and because it is also German engineering. It's no laughing matter, guys. It's not German humor. But anyway, I think that is my little bit on the 2A6. Back over to you, Hussar. I don't know who you would like to go
Okay.
next.
I'll just briefly speak about a point I would like to make very quickly. That is, it is very it's so much easier to modernize a light tank than an MBT, because if you look at an MBT, it needs to have good armor, it needs to have a good gun, it needs to have good mobility, and like developing those things, like it requires minions, it pulls decades. So, and like when you modernize a light tank, you look at optics, firepower, and mobility. So, the Chaffee modernization programs by Norway and by Chile. So let's start off with Norway. They got a Chaffee, and they put a 90mm French baguette launcher inside it, a laser rangefinder. Yeah,
Not the French.
but it was a very good gun.
Yes, the 90mm, the
A
French
laser
90mm is pretty good.
rangefinder and night vision, and those are extremely important things. First of all, let's start off with the night vision. The Chieftain on another YouTube channel called Military History Visualized has mentioned that it's better to have a T55 with night vision than a T72 without.
And he's got a very good point, because a lot of the attacks in current combat in countries that shall henceforth no longer be named for YouTube purposes is that a lot of these attacks take place early morning or late evening, when the troops of the enemy team are enemy force are most likely, to
Red
be
versus
red versus blue. But they're most likely to be on a low level of awareness and a low level of combat readiness, because they are generally taking a break from combat operations. So having a tank that has night vision and is able to move around in the dark and attack in low light conditions, and this is applicable to rain as well, and storms, snowstorms, etc. The night vision capability is a very underrated system, I think, in a lot of tanks.
Yes. Also with the Chaffee, the laser rangefinder, it's something that helps not only with combat but also with the main purpose of the light tank, which is recon. Yeah.
And also artillery spotting at that.
Yes. So it's a tank which I believe could still be useful in modern day, because if you look at its firepower, also the French 90mm baguette launcher, in South Africa, that gun was used on the Ratel 90, and it killed T55s. So it's combat proven, not like a test under ideal conditions, but in combat it's proven it can take out an MBT. And in the war which shall not be named, T-55s are being used, T-62s are being used, and having a neat little machine like this, all you need for it is some little camo nets and something that could protect it from infrared spotting or night vision spotting. Apply that on it, and it will work great. It will work for recon. It will destroy an APC, an IFV, which are seen in modern combat way more than MBTs are. That is the bulk of an armed force.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really cool thing. And it's just proof that you can make an old tank kick ass today.
And I think what's interesting to point out there, Hassar, is also that the modernization program for the Shafi, with the upgrades that you've mentioned, it has a very large potential export market. I mean, China at the moment is busy exporting or attempting to export a series of light tanks with very similar characteristics to what the modernization program would have done for the Chaffee.
Yes.
So I think not only was the modernization program ahead of its time, and unfortunately with most things that was not truly valued, but like you said, Hassar, it's a very good aggressive reconnaissance vehicle. It can theoretically, if you apply maybe a little bit of composite armor to the front, it could theoretically stand its ground against what makes up the bulk of armored forces today, like you said, the armored personnel carriers and infantry fighting vehicles, which more often than not feature 30mm and 20mm, and the very rare instance large caliber guns. And the Shafi, with the modernization armor packaging that it would have received, it would have been able to do a lot of damage to those vehicles and survive a lot of damage from them, in fact. So, and I mean, in South Africa, I know that we have obviously the Eland and the Ratel 90s. I think the Eland has been decommissioned, unfortunately, in favor of the Rooikat. But our Ratel APCs are still quite prominent within our armored forces.
Yes.
And something like the Shafi, or the Chaffee rather, that you're proposing, the modernization variant of it, I think it would have found not only a large export market share and a large production capability in South Africa, because we already possess the facilities for that, but just in Africa as a whole, it's got the firepower of a main battle tank. It's as effective at killing main battle tanks as an MBT might be, but it's a lot cheaper. And I think that's something that's often overlooked when it comes to armored options for modern militaries, especially from countries that have a significantly smaller percentage of defense expenditure to put onto modernization programs. So I think this could have really found a very strong export market in the global south, and not just limited to Africa, but to America, South America, to Asia, Middle East potentially.
Yeah. You can't afford a path and get a Chaffee.
That's exactly it. And at the end of the Second World War and in the early years of the Cold War,
yeah, the things were left all around the world.
Exactly, there were plenty of them just sort of scattered. So I think that was a really big missed opportunity. But maybe one day somebody can resuscitate that program, because maybe you can't use Chaffies anymore because they're very difficult to come by. But perhaps build something similar along the same bloodline,
Yeah.
So
also, the Chaffee has a very low profile and fairly good crew ergonomics, and also the 90mm gun that it uses heat rounds. I am a huge fan of heat rounds because it can do bunker busting, it can be anti-infantry, it can be anti-armor. It's a very universal round.
Yeah, it's a very versatile round. It's got a lot of flexibility.
So now let's get on to the second Chaffee that I wanted to choose, and it's the Chilean Chaffee, modernized by Israel by putting in the engine of an M113 and the 60mm HVMS gun. Now, capabilities of that gun are absolutely phenomenal. It could penetrate at an angle of 60 degrees, 120mm of armor at 2 kilometers.
That seems a little fantastical, if I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and they did also a test where they took 2 T-62s side by side, they shot at it with the gun, and it went right through their sides.
That sounds a bit.
Sheesh. No, that's possible. I mean, if it's using an APFSDS round,
Yes.
60 millimeters, you also have to bear in mind that the round is also probably depleted uranium or some other
Yeah.
really dense material,
Tungsten.
So- or tungsten or something. And I mean,
Yeah.
the Israelis, whether you like it or not, politics aside, let's leave that out of here. The Israelis are really good at making things go back. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They have really solid defense industry.
They are good at modernizing things.
I mean, the Merkava, or the Magach, sorry, were very,
Magachs.
very effective modernization programs in Israel. So it's not hard to believe that they could make a 60 mil go through. Because also, I mean, how thick really is a T62 sidearm? It's very
Yeah.
minimal.
So the difference, like, when it comes to armor between the T55 and T62, that's because Khrushchev, he wanted to keep medium tanks below the weight of 40 tons. So when they were making the T62 and fitting in the bigger gun into it, they had to like cut off some bits of armor from it so that it would still be the same weight.
I mean, to give you some contrast here, sorry, I'm just busy looking at the statistics. So the T-54, which was created in 1949, had a side hull armor of 80 millimeters, right? Then you had the T-55A, which was built in, I believe, in 1955. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. Correct me in the comment section. But that also had hull armor of 80 millimeters, and then you went to the T-55, also 80 millimeters. Then the T-62 is also 80 millimeters. It's a consistent theme. The Russians don't have very thick side armor, but the frontal armor also decreased a little bit. It went from 120 or 110, sorry, effective, to even less than that. So, yeah, it's entirely plausible that it went through to T-62s.
Yes, it has very good low profile when it comes to this, and also the opponent that the Chileans had some not good relations with. I think it was Peru, and they were using T-55s and T-54s. So a well-positioned Chaffee, that was like the 70s or something like this. Well-positioned Chaffee with that 60mm gun, and with that better engine from the M113, it could do incredible damage. It would just do a shoot and scoot, which is what tank destroyers and light tanks are meant to do, and this was classified as a light tank destroyer.
Oh, best of both worlds there. But also interesting thing about that is that the Chaffee would have had a significant advantage, because also if you think about the terrain, that both I think you said it was Norway that started this.
The Chilean one with the 60mm, that's Chile.
and the other one was
Norway.
So yeah, Norway and Chile both share very similar characteristics. They both have exceptionally hilly terrain. There's lots of mountains
MBTs struggle a lot
because of the elevation and depression angles. Whereas this thing, I'm looking at the picture now, it's got a lot of depression. So it would have, it's like me.
like good group.
Yeah, but that is an advantage, and also the fact that it's a light tank. People underestimate the advantage mobility offers, and this is also why the Leopard 2 series is so good. Is that mobility? If you duff your first shot, if you wimp your first shot, you can just be like, all right, cool, I'm gonna back out of here, reload, and then by the time you look up to where that round may have potentially come from, I'm gone.
A lot of things in war come down to costs. So if a Chaffee destroys, for example, a Leopard from the side, I'm sure it could do it from the side.
Without a doubt.
That's already a massive win when it comes to costs of war.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, the T-62 also is not a cheap tank. Let's be honest.
No tank is cheap.
This is also a fair point. We won't talk about the South African expenditure yet.
Okay, so now the Chaffee rant is over. Let's go over to easy.
Are you still awake, old man?
I'm still awake. I don't know if I'll be able to finish my thing because it's 8 o'clock now.
You'll be fine. We'll push it.
Okay, so basically what I just want to quickly